Let's move on to Penny and David, who are going to tell us about accessibility tips. There we go. I'll stop sharing and let you go.
Hi, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Penny Pearson, and I am a coordinator for distance learning projects with OTAN, the Outreach and Technical Assistance Network. We are a sister state leadership project with CASAS as well as CalPro. And with me today is my colleague in arms with accessibility, David Espinoza. David, can you want to introduce yourself, please?
That's me, David, also with OTAN.
Oh, that was short and sweet.
Yeah,
He's one of our programmers as well and helps quite a bit with the accessibility side of things. So I just want to give a bit of history. We have been working in collaboration with CASAS for the EL Civics Exchange. And one of those requirements means that any content posted to the website for the exchange must be fully 508 compliant in terms of accessibility. So that means anybody who has a physical or even mental cognitive disability has to be able to have access or an equivalent experience of that material that's posted on the site. So that's proved a bit challenging for some of our teachers who may not have that mindset quite yet. So we're working on ways to help teachers understand when they create materials to keep that in mind, that they should be thinking about those learners amongst their many that they have, that they may need some form of accommodation. And it's as simple as California statistics shows we have about 1 in 4 of our adults in California have some form of disability, whether it's physical, mental, vision, hearing, etc. So it's just a good practice, but it takes a while to get started. So originally, when we were working with the exchange and Lori and the team at CASAS, we were writing and writing and writing, and it turned out to be something along the lines of, a tome on how to use Microsoft Word. So we backtracked a bit and we were really trying to cull things down to a tips sheet. So I want to share it with you so you can see what it looks like, and then I will upload it into the chat to give everybody an opportunity to kind of get their teeth into it and see whether or not it's going to prove beneficial, or if you have any suggestions, and you can share them with me here at OTAN. Let me kind of rearrange my screen here a little bit. Is everybody seeing the document? You can give me a thumbs up or an okay in the chat. That would be great. Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, so here's what we did. We were really trying to be application agnostic, okay? I don't know if you've ever gotten into the Microsoft versus Macintosh, debacle every now and then, but I tease my colleagues who have Macintoshes. Of course, anytime something goes wrong, it's all the Macintosh's fault. But so here we were trying to offer ways that give a very high overview without diving so far into the weeds of what are the things that need to be considered. And it really doesn't matter whether you're using Microsoft Word, WordPerfect, if anybody remembers that one from eons ago, WordStar, Google Docs, or OpenOffice, or any of those that you might be producing materials in. And this includes for even working in slide decks. All of these different applications have different tools, and sometimes that they have really good tools, other times they're not so good. So I admit my bias. I really like Microsoft Office. They have a built-in accessibility checker. Adobe Acrobat has a built-in accessibility checker, but it's not as easy and straightforward as the one in Microsoft. So these tips are meant to give that high overview. So we start with, just some basic text, and then talk about using proper headings. And when we use the term proper headings, these are actually styles and or placeholders that are in the program that you're using. So in my word, they're styles. Sometimes you'll see them as headings, and it's a way, they're listed as headings, but it's a formula of not only programming code that tells the screen reader, this is a special section of this document. You can certainly select text and make it bigger, make it a different color, but the screen readers do not recognize it as a division point in a document. That's why using the headings or styles, and in like slide decks, these equivalent the placeholders, on the PowerPoint where it says put title here or enter list here or whatever. Those are the placeholders. Those are the things that the screen readers bounce between to navigate within those types of documents. So sometimes that can take a little noodling around if you haven't used them before in the applications that you're using. Most of them have a good help feature to help you get started on any of these tips that we're offering here today. Using lists is also very important. I've seen a lot of folks that will manually create a list. They'll hit the tab key, they'll type a 1 and a dot and hit the tab key again, and then they'll type something out. That's a manual way to create a list, but if you use the ones that are built in, the organized list, sometimes there's bullets, sometimes there's numbers, then it allows the screen reader to identify it to the user that this is a list and how many items are in the list, and then the user can determine, I don't want to read this list. I don't want to listen to this list. I want to move forward. They can jump to the next element, whether it's another heading or another list. Using hyperlinks, meaningful hyperlinks. And I just added a little example there because it's real important that when anybody who's using a screen reader, when they come across a hyperlink that isn't meaningful, this is our term here, then that particular screen reader reads that URL letter for letter. So it's going to say https://www./. And I'm sorry, you and I don't want to do that. So converting that URL into something more meaningful, like I did on this document, saying, find the resources on the OTAN website. The text OTAN website has an applied URL to it, which is the hyperlink to that resource. The screen reader will say hyperlink to OTAN website, whereas the second one, which is the full write out of that URL, is that long letter by letter. So hopefully that makes sense about why those meaningful hyperlinks are important. And there's a note in there, if you know that your document is being distributed via print, using some of the URL shorteners where you can actually do a customized URL like bit.ly, or there used to be tiny URL. I'm not even sure if they're around anymore, where you could actually type in there, bit.ly, and then put in a common term like module 3 or something like that. It makes it much easier and shorter for any screen reader to indicate this is a link to bit.ly module 3. Alternate
that was
text
more for like print material,
for print, right?
So
right.
So the user or the person looking at the document doesn't have to type this long
Big old
address.
Yeah.
That could have a mistake in it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that text is in there, David. So thank you for that reminder. It's there. Alternate text on images is another very important one. And I'm one of those people that, working with teachers, I will say, when you use images in a document, you need to ensure that the image you're using is relevant to what you're teaching. If it's not, either decide not to use it, or secondarily, you can say it's decorative. And that means that the screen reader will bypass that decorative text, decorative image, and they don't have to worry about, am I missing something that's in this document? Sometimes this is used if it's a logo. Oftentimes I'll just put in there, this is just OTAN logo. It doesn't have to be, for those types of images, a full-on explanation. It's a circle with, X number of colors or whatnot. But if it is an image that lends itself to your instruction, then it should have a good description that conveys what that meaning is in that image. So that's something that all of these programs allow you to do, is to add alt text. You see it as alt-text, and that's an easy thing to apply in most of these. And if you're not sure, one of my favorite tricks is to right click on an image and see what options you get. Often you'll see that add alt text or edit alt text is listed there as well. This other one, David and I were just talking about this, about identifying document language. And because I am not a speaker of a second language, I'm going, well, heck, how do we do that? And Microsoft has many different ways. I don't know if any of you ever noticed down at the bottom of the Microsoft screen here, I have English. And if I click on that, I can actually choose other languages that I may be typing in if it's supported by my keyboard, etc. And there's other ways that you can do this, but most of the time we're going to be using English. But some of you want a particular way to have a document in multiple languages. So you should always tell the system, what language is this document in? We were just looking at, I don't know how many of you actually kind of go around and noodle around in Word, but under the review bar in Word, they also have the ability to translate. So anybody out there who has another language, mastery of language, just take one of your documents and try this. I haven't tried it, so I'm not sure how it'll work, but I think this could be an amazing tool for someone who wants to be able to provide good information in other languages. I can't tell you how well it works. Both David and I were going, that looks interesting. We got to try that out. So I haven't done it yet, but I'll upload this in a minute, and it will see how well it does in terms of translating to another language. Another big one is this using tables wisely. This has also been something that has happened. Whoops, here we go. Sorry. That I often see teachers trying to use tables for layout. Like I want to use this as a way to put things in the order I want to see them in. And that's not a good idea. Okay. Tables in terms of full accessibility should be used to convey data, and they should be small. Okay, so don't use a table to control the layout. If you need some help in that area, use the help files of the application, talk to your friends, your fellow teachers, and they can help you with some of that, so you're not doing that. Otherwise, you're going to get somebody who's using a screen reader potentially lost in trying to figure out what's in this table and where am I going, how do I navigate through this so I know what's going on. So it's there's things like identifying your header row or your column on the far left side. So that helps screen readers know, where they are in the table. And for the most part, it can also provide a way for somebody who uses a screen reader to understand that text within that table. The last one down here at the bottom is always a sticky one, and I'm going to bring David in here as well, because this is something that we struggle with quite a bit, in that when you have something in one type of document, whether it's Microsoft or something else, and you go to convert it to Adobe, there seems to always be a little problem, whether it's one item or more. And so we were talking about the best practice for converting anything to PDF. And I'm going to bring David in here because we were just experimenting with this. I always use in Microsoft, I go to File, Save as PDF. And I believe that's the best practice. Am I correct on that, David?
Yeah, that's the way to go. See, the thing is that Adobe PDFs use a behind the scenes tag structure in order to section out each area of the document and identify, if it's a list or a heading and that sort of thing. And Microsoft Word, when you export it to Adobe, carries over and creates that tag structure for the PDF so that it can be accessible. Not all softwares do that. For instance, Google Docs does not do that. So in Google Docs, if you do the save as PDF, it's not accessible. Even though you can look at the PDF and everything looks fine, the tag structure is not there behind the scenes for the screen reader to use. You can create it, but it gets very complex and difficult to do and can take all day for a small document sometimes. So we usually recommend using Microsoft Word. And if you want to, in the end, have a PDF, then use Microsoft Word to create and edit your document and make any changes, and then export to a PDF because it carries over that tag structure. There is a couple things though that still need to be done when it is in the PDF. Mainly, the document title thing is one, and we have a note on that there. But other than that, it's as long as your document isn't overly complex with crazy formatting and floats and all this stuff like that, it'll be accessible when it comes into Adobe PDF. So,
David, can you explain what you mean by floats? Are you talking about
oh,
text boxes or images?
yeah,
images?
you know,
Okay.
if you put like an image and then you can have the text wrap around it or on the right side of it, that sort of thing. For the most part, it'll carry that stuff over okay into the Adobe PDF tag structure, but there's some that it doesn't like when like text wraps around it on both sides. It can get kind of picky. If you have a float over a float, it can get a little weird. So yeah, try to avoid using too much of that if you can. But yeah, otherwise it'll carry over the stuff, and for the most part it does okay. It's just when it's really complex is when it struggles with it, and it can still be made to be accessible, but it requires editing the tag structure stuff in Adobe, which, as I said, can be very complex and difficult to wrap your head around.
And I think that's been the biggest challenge with us converting documents from Word into Adobe, because there's always an error, and the error typically happens with this title primarily. And if you don't have Adobe Acrobat Pro, which has an accessibility checker and the ability to correct these things, then we run into issues where we can't post a document with errors. We can post some with warnings, with a little, I'll put some qualifiers on there, but
yeah, there's like soft warnings or whatever.
Yeah, there's soft. Yeah, I like that term, soft warnings, rather than the errors, because the errors just draw attention that something isn't right. So, and we just haven't, we don't have a good solution yet of how to fix that, other than people having, or agencies having, to spend the money for someone to have Adobe Acrobat Pro and understand how that accessibility tool works. And it's very quick and easy to fix, but it's time. So that's why, you know, this is probably why it's at the end of our tips list here, is that we know this is still a kind of ongoing, and there's no super easy resolution when you're dealing with teachers that perhaps don't have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro or some other tool that can ensure the high level of accessibility that we need under compliance with 508, as well as the web-based requirements under WCAG 2.1. So it is something that we'll keep working on, and by our partnership with CASAS, as well as Lori and the team, of providing tips and then trying to provide feedback to those that submit materials, that they, you know, if they have an issue, we try to at least say, you know, we weren't able to pass this, you need to fix X. But it is a responsibility of the person who created the original materials to make those corrections. And I'm just real hopeful that those teachers out there, because I know we have some very prolific, extremely talented teachers that create these co-ops and write these materials. We just need to have these accessibility concepts in mind as they create. So when they get to that point of creating the final document and being able to check it for accessibility, they're not having to go back and spend another 2 hours trying to fix all the things that they didn't catch at the beginning. So if they walk into it with kind of this mindset by using some of these things to help them, and if they're not sure about them, to reach out either through using the help files on the program that they're using. If they need to contact us at OTAN, we're happy to help with those questions as much as possible. A lot of times we'll send you off to our resources page on the OTAN website. I can bring that up here so I can show you what that looks like. We have a full whole, I mean, and it's like I told David one time, it's like drinking from a fire hose, because we have so much out there on the OTAN website for accessibility resources that it can be a lot, but it really dives into the weeds and allows anyone to find additional, more detailed information on these main topics that we've covered on this tip sheet. And I think with that, Lori, we're good, unless we have questions.
Great. So I just want to say that you got a lot of thank yous and good jobs and great jobs. And thank you so very much for this tip sheet. So we're so thrilled that you did that. And I just want to I just wanted to point out one thing. We are hoping that agencies will submit their materials not as PDFs, right? So that they can be adjusted by agencies who download them, but that it's good to know how to do it in PDF so that you can give it to your students in that way so that things won't move around, right? Am I correct in that, Penny?
Yes, I mean, there's still some issues about, universality. I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up. In that we want, we want that flexibility of teachers to being able to modify the work. It's very difficult to modify work when it's in a PDF format, but at the same time, if you have Microsoft Word or you're using something like Google Docs, that you could convert these documents and then, modify to your needs. It's just that secondary piece, if it needs to go into a PDF format, that ensures that universal access, meaning anybody out there who has an Adobe PDF reader, they can open and use that document and it passes accessibility. That's where, we have kind of two camps, because we want the flexibility of editing, but we want to ensure that whoever is using it at the other end has the full capability for seeing something in a full accessible format.
Great. And so where are we with the tip sheet where everybody's so happy about it? Are you going to send it out for review and then finalize it at some soon point?
Well,
or what?
I uploaded it in the chat. So this group can be the beta testers if they would open that up and, like I said, take a peek, kick the tires. If you have any changes or any recommendations or suggestions, let me know. I put my email in the chat. Please send it to me. And then I think I'll work with our programmers, Lori, about where we can also place this on the Exchange, so folks have it easily available, that they can review it and download it and have it, propped up next to their computer screen as they do their work.
That's so great. And thank you so much, Penny and David. And if any of you have any further questions, Penny and David have been giving us their time these last few months. I'm not sure if we need to continue to do that. If you think we do, network participants, feel free to let me know and we'll ask Penny and David to come back again. But probably, Penny, I would guess you want to have some specific questions if that would be the case, right? Because you've gone over pretty much the general things of what we need to know. And now we have this tip sheet that we can follow as well.